Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Yasha if you're new here. Today I wanted to do things a little bit differently. As you can see, I have all these cupcakes in front of me. I put a little flag for a place where I interviewed when I was going through the whole residency application process, and I wanted to talk you through a little bit about why I chose or didn't choose these programs. Honestly, most radiology programs are pretty similar. They all require the same things to get verified through ACGME, so you can rest assured that no matter where you end up, you're going to get really good training. I think that the differences between each program are pretty small, and in the grand scheme of things, probably not very significant unless you have a very specific thing that you want to do. For example, a specific type of research, a specific type of interest that you want to pursue. Those are the things that will really shape your residency experience, but otherwise, if you're just looking for a place to get really solid training, any program that you apply to will probably provide that. Just to start off, I can talk about what I wanted. As you can see, all of my programs are pretty diverse, and I also interviewed at places outside of these. Just for full disclosure, these were not my only interviews, but I thought these had some good highlights that we could talk about. I wanted to leave Michigan. I'm originally from Michigan. I wanted to leave Michigan, so for me that was kind of a priority, but coming from a new school, I kind of applied broadly, so that's why you'll see some Michigan schools mixed in here, or Michigan programs. And I also wanted to go somewhere where I would have a really awesome fellowship placement. After the radiology interview process, I realized that other things were important to me, like women in radiology or diversity in radiology. Those things ended up becoming more apparent as I was going through. So when I was making my final rank list, that was something that factored in for me, but that wasn't something that I was really aware of before I started interviewing. And just as a caveat, things have obviously changed. I'm a PGY4 now, so this was 4 years ago, or even more than that. And I'm going through and looking at things just to be sure that they are still valid, or if things have changed, just to make sure that what I'm telling you is accurate. And I hope that you all find this video useful. So why don't we get started? The first place I wanted to talk about was University of Arkansas, and this was in Little Rock. Like I said, I applied really broadly, so if you're wondering like why I applied everywhere, this was why. I was really afraid I wouldn't get any interviews because I was at a new program. I actually ended up going out there, and this program really surprised me. I was very impressed with the huge catchment area. I think it's like it's the only medical school in the state. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a huge catchment area. I remember them emphasizing that, and I remember them talking about how they are a level 1 trauma center, both adult and pediatric, and I thought that was really unique. And actually, as I'm like going through the rest of these programs, that is really unique. I think that not a lot of programs are both adult and pediatric like that. I also remember them being pretty IMG friendly, so that's just another tip off. And that means that they had really awesome diversity in their program. There was so many people that I seemed to connect with there. I really enjoyed my experience there. Everyone was very friendly, and I just wanted to throw this one into this pile because I thought I was pleasantly surprised. And if anyone's interested in moving out there, this would be a really great program, or if you're from there and you want to go home, I was really, really, really pleasantly surprised. Okay, the second program I wanted to talk about was the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. I was super thrilled to get an interview here. I did not think that I would get one, so that was really exciting for me. And when I got to the interview, I have to say the hospital was so pretty. The hospital is really nice. They had this like acoustic theater that looked amazing within the radiology department. So I was kind of excited about University of Virginia. Now, actually, University of Virginia was one of the places where I felt the lack of diversity the most. And I did some research before hopping on here to say that, because I think since then they have really upped their game in that sense. They have a diversity and inclusion fund, which is like an award you can get, and they also have a radiologist group. So I think since I interviewed, which was like now 5 years ago, things have significantly changed, and if I were to interview now, I bet my experience would have been totally different. And I think that if you apply there and you get an interview, you should absolutely interview, because seriously, their hospital, their volume, everything is amazing, and I think that whoever trains there is going to come out like really, really advantaged, because it was a really nice hospital. And that was really what I wanted to say about UVA, was about the diversity, but I'm really happy to see that it's like significantly improved since I was there. All right, so let's go on to another program. How about Rochester? We'll go to New York programs next. So I applied to the University of Rochester because I applied broadly, and I went because it's a nice program. And honestly, sorry the light is changing. Honestly, I was, again, pleasantly surprised. And you'll hear this over and over, and I have a feeling a lot of people will feel the same way when you guys are interviewing. You're going to be like, oh, I was like pleasantly surprised. You know, places that you originally didn't think you would want to go, you're going to feel like, oh, I could really go there. And that was me with University of Rochester. And I actually interviewed there in the dead of winter, and it was like this, literally I thought I was like going to get stuck in Rochester. It was a huge storm. We barely made it in. I think I got in at like midnight the night before, and then I barely made it to my interview. I mean, imagine going to an interview with heels on in snow. Like, what do I wear boots and then change it at the interview? Like, these are things that, you know, we had to consider. And Rochester was definitely one of the places where I ended up almost getting stuck. Luckily, I didn't get stuck, but I almost did. And when I got to the hospital, it was really nice, and I remember being so like mesmerized by their CT scanners that were for pediatrics, and they were like, they had like, I don't remember if it was like a castle or like a ship or something, but it was so cute, and I remember just really, really liking that. And I also remember really enjoying their research opportunities. I don't remember a lot else aside from being very pleasantly surprised with my entire interview experience and just feeling like I could see myself there. And again, you have to be a lover of winter, because that winter was definitely one of the rough ones, and I think that in Rochester, New York, that's definitely gonna happen almost every year. So, and that brings me to the next New York program, which is Mount Sinai. And I actually interviewed at Mount Sinai West, which at that time was Mount Sinai St. Luke's Roosevelt. I should hold my cupcake. I wish I could eat all of these after. And I really loved this program. I ranked it really high. At the time that I was interviewing, they were undergoing some sort of like, they were changing from St. Luke's Roosevelt to Mount Sinai West, and I think there was they were combining 2 residency programs. I think it was Beth Israel, but I don't remember exactly which Mount Sinai's were getting combined. Since then, though, I've heard that Mount Sinai West has like really, really exploded. I mean, any of the Mount Sinai's would be awesome to train at. I know that they have really solid IR training, so if you're interested in IR, you should definitely check out Mount Sinai. Plus, you're in New York City of like all places, and I think that they even got like tickets to, they would get tickets to like the ballet. They had like a raffle that they could enter into. I mean, there are so many perks to living in New York City. And I think that if you ever have the opportunity to go to New York City and live in New York City for 4 years, residency is a really good time to do that. They also had subsidized housing, and I remember they took us to see it, and it was pretty nice. It wasn't like horrible, you know, like, oh, I couldn't live here type of housing. It was really nice. So if you're worried that like Mount Sinai or any New York City program might be too expensive, you can always look into their subsidized housing and see if they have any that you could participate in. But I did rank Mount Sinai really high, so I really enjoyed it there. They have awesome diversity. It's New York City, like I said. Who doesn't want to go there? Yeah, so that's Mount Sinai. So the next program I wanted to talk about was Case Western, and their hospital is called University Hospitals. And I really think that they have a really solid training program at Case. They get trauma, they get a lot of medical education. They have a really like outstanding medical school affiliated with it. I think the training you get at Case is really, really outstanding. I had a really good time at my interview there. The residents, there was like lots of diversity. Cleveland is also a great place to live if you have a family. I just didn't rank it higher because it was in Cleveland. You're going to hear, for me, geography was like the major thing that is why I ended up where I did. But I really thought like they have so many pathways, so many different like clinical pathways that you can do if you're interested in informatics or, you know, ESIR or quality and safety. They have lots of different ways that you can really tailor your experience. And so for that reason, I thought that Case is a really great place to train, and I think if you get an interview there, you should absolutely try to nail it because Case might end up really high on your list. Next, I wanted to talk about my 2 Michigan programs, Henry Ford and Beaumont. And while they may be very close geographically, like Royal Oak and Detroit are not that far apart, They are very different programs. I actually did a 1-month IR elective at Henry Ford as a medical student, so I was able to see kind of into the residency program a little bit more. I did not do that at Beaumont, so I can't speak to it at the same level, but I did interview at both places. Henry Ford is very high volume. They have really high IR volume. They have high everything volume. And I just remember thinking, like, if I want to see a lot of pathology, I want to go to Henry Ford. And Henry Ford is actually the highest ranked of all of my Michigan programs because of that reason. I think that they get such amazing pathology. They have really high volume, and you will work. But as a resident, I think that's what you want. You want to be working so that when you're attending, you don't have, this experience of like, what am I looking at? I've never seen this. You want to see it all during your residency, and I think Henry Ford will definitely give you that experience. They also have a really established IR program, and I think that if you're at all interested in IR, Henry Ford is really a good place to go. They also have a really good MSK program. Sorry, I'm just like kind of thinking and talking as I'm thinking, and they have a really good MSK program as well. Henry Ford all around is just very solid. You're going to get a really awesome training there. Beaumont is different than Henry Ford in the sense that the hospital is in a much nicer geographical area. Royal Oak has like a higher, just base income, and I think that that's really shown in the hospital. The hospital is very beautiful. People call it Club Beau. When I interviewed there, they have like a doctor's dining room. That's a thing, and that's where we had our like interview lunch, was in the doctor's dining room. You have like a separate cafeteria. I think that your like points can work at the Starbucks in the lobby, so like it's like a different experience than Henry Ford for sure. I don't know if the volume is quite as high as Henry Ford, and I remember them really, really emphasizing that they get paid very well. So if that's something you're looking for, which I'm sure everybody is, definitely check out Beaumont. It's a great lifestyle. I think that the lifestyle at Beaumont is really significantly nicer than probably what I'm even going through right now. And so if those are things, like if you have children and you want to be able to spend more time with them, maybe Beaumont is a good place to go. Now, I know they also do a lot of moonlighting, so if you're looking for a place to rack up a lot of money, Beaumont is a good place to go. Please do your own research. That was 5 years ago. I'm pretty sure that's still true, but I would obviously double check that, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But those are the differences between Henry Ford and Beaumont. Obviously, like I said earlier in the video, no matter where you go, you're going to get good training because everyone has the minimum requirements. So you're not going to be losing out, like on overall overarching training. It's just kind of more granular level. What is each program like? That's what I wanted to highlight today. Now I'm going to talk about my 2 Chicago programs. So I was really thinking about going to Chicago. That was like another big city that I was really looking forward to going to and living in for 4 years because that's where all my friends were at that time. And I interviewed at Northwestern, Loyola, and actually UIC as well. But I'm going to talk about these 2 because they kind of stand out the most in my mind. Loyola, I remember being just really, really vibing with the residents. I just really enjoyed like talking to them and getting to know them. And I remember there was really good diversity there. I really felt like I fit in. I just enjoyed the overall experience. They have a ton of trainees. They have their own school of medicine. So I think that those things obviously make a program really strong. Northwestern, I loved, but I also thought it was a more fellow-driven program. I think that they have a ton of fellows, which is great as a trainee because you get to like learn from your fellows and you don't have to bother your attendings. And I remember thinking, like, if I get to go anywhere, I want to go to Northwestern because it had the name. It was a great hospital with tons of volume. They have Lurie Children's right next door, and I thought all of those things were really great. The only drawback to Northwestern, first of all, the location is amazing. It's right on the water, but is that, and this goes for all of Chicago and really all of the Midwest, was that all of the trainees, their fellowship placement is kind of all in the Midwest. And you'll kind of notice that like, if you're in the Midwest, you kind of tend to stay in the Midwest, whether it's like going to a bigger hospital next door or staying in your same institution. So like people at Northwestern will stay at Northwestern. People at Loyola might go to Northwestern or University of Michigan or bigger hospitals around. Going across geographical barriers seems a little less It seems a little less common than how people move for residency. And that's probably because people have families and people are more established. But that was something that I kept noticing, and especially at Northwestern, I noticed that so many people stayed at Northwestern for their fellowships. And that was obviously probably by choice, but for me, I know that I'm someone who would want to move or like go somewhere different. So for me, I was like, I'm not sure if that's really what I want. And same with Loyola, like I was like, I don't know if I want to stay in Chicago forever. I just want to go for 4 years. So maybe the Midwest was not the best option for me. But I loved both of these programs so much, and in another life, I would have ended up in Chicago. So now we're left with one program, Mount Auburn Hospital. I used my Harvard Medical School Shield because we are one of their teaching hospitals, and I'm really happy that I chose this program. It was actually my second interview, and I was not expecting to love it. I had never even heard of it, to be totally honest. We only take 3 per year. It was really small, like on the smaller side of any of these programs. Most of these programs are pretty large, and I was just like so pleasantly surprised. I know I've said that like 1,000 times in this video, but I really was like, I did not think that I would like this program, and now here I am thinking like I'm gonna rank this really, really high. It was crazy. The culture was just like so laid back. The interview was so laid back. Everyone was really friendly. I felt like I could just talk to anybody about like my life or about my pets or about anything, and it would have been totally fine. And that's exactly the culture that I've ended up in. I'm so happy I've ended up here. I'm happy that I ended up in Boston of all places, because Boston is just a great city. There's so many hospitals around that you can really like make friends with so many radiology programs, which I would say is a total advantage of places like Chicago, places like Cleveland, where there are multiple residency programs. I mean, think about that when you are applying, because like Boston, we get to make so many friends with other programs, we get to rotate at other programs, we get to have Boston Children's right next door. It's really a nice little medical bubble. I think it's a great place to train. Other reasons I chose Mount Auburn was because there's an education track that you can do, or you can do a leadership track in your 4th year, and I thought like having like an education fellowship would be really good on my resume, or like a leadership fellowship. I think those would be really good. And what really sold me was the fellowship match. I mean, people every year end up at like MGH, Brigham, and now that I'm going through it myself, I totally see why. I mean, our attendings are like so plugged in with everybody that it's really easy to jump to like a big name hospital from our small but, you know, powerful program. With only 3 residents per year, our attendings can really personalize our letters. They know everything about us. They know like what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and they will like seriously do anything they can to help us. And I think even though it's more call, I'm going to become a better attending because of it. I'm going to have a better chance at a fellowship that I want because of it. And overall, I have no regrets. I think that Mount Auburn is an awesome place to train. And ultimately, I'm so thrilled that this is right matched. Alright guys, well that's the end of it. I hope that this was helpful to you. You could see kind of how I made my decision to end up at Mount Auburn. You can see what factors played into my decision and how I kind of went about putting things on or taking things off of my list. If you have any questions or corrections, please feel free to let me know, and I will update the comment box below with those updates. And with that, I will see you all in my next video. Bye!